So I recently had the privilege of partnering with Lori and Nationwide on this project, which was titled Planning Optimization. Lori, maybe I could ask you, if you don't mind, to do a quick introduction and maybe give us a little background about what that project was about at Nationwide.
Sure. First of all, thanks for having me on today's spotlight here to talk about our planning optimization project. It was really wonderful working with Don and the Huron team on it. I've been at Nationwide for almost 15 years and currently lead the planning and forecasting group as well as our management reporting team at Nationwide. And we kicked off a project way back in 2018. We called it planning optimization, and it was going to be 2 phases. We titled it this because we knew we wanted to optimize our planning tools. And to just give you a little bit of background is what we had prior to kicking off this project. All of our planning applications were using Hyperion Planning, but we are using that tool just simply as a data repository or landing zone for all of our forecasting and planning results. We used those results ultimately to do the reporting that we needed to do, but we knew to get the best use of the tool set, we really wanted to have the true modeling take place inside the system versus outside, which was being done prior to the project in Excel and Access and various models. So we just really felt like the dependence on those offline applications could be reduced if we used the tools more holistically. So we kicked off a 2-phase project in 2018 where we started with a proof of concept. We went through lots of stakeholder meetings to kind of talk about what our finance teams wanted out of the project. And we came up with a future state vision for our project to state that we wanted to have more efficient and effective forecasting with reduced cycle time. We wanted to leverage some of the pre-built modules within the tool sets. Our finance teams asked for what-if modeling capabilities, and they wanted, kind of key to what you guys are talking about today, they wanted to automate multiple offline data sources, as well as improve our reporting. All of that while using a cloud solution. So we divided our project up into 2 phases. The first phase was our departmental expenses, and that kicked off in 2020. In February of 2020, and we brought online all of our departmental expense models from offline expense tools that were being used across the organization, and then went live a year later. The second phase of the project will be focused around our P&L, balance sheet, and capital modeling, and that started in April of this year and will complete later on in 2021. So it was a great project, and we had some guiding principles that Huron helped us set. And those were, we wanted to satisfy our core business requirements, but we just want to make sure that we didn't over-engineer the solution. We've done that before on other projects and it hasn't been successful. We wanted to make sure we strive for standardization and improving our process. And we wanted to streamline those planning methodologies and models. And then lastly, we wanted to reduce our IT dependency through like all the data movements, integrations, and infrastructure, which is really kind of key to what we're talking about here today.
Lori, obviously we talked long and hard today about the business information model and the need to have it synchronized. And, you know, as you and I know, we went through that exercise as part of this project of kind of expanding the business model. You spoke a little bit about, hey, all the offline data processes that were in place and trying to remove that friction, but then also really expanding the business information model to support the planning process. I wonder if you can comment on that, on some of the challenges, and then how we went about, solving for that at Nationwide.
Yeah, as you mentioned, the synchronized data model was key to our success. It'll be key in phase 2, but in phase 1, it was really key. What we uncovered as we got into the project, in just our phase 1 models alone, there were 11 source systems and over 50 data feeds. So prior to having this project in place, all of that data was being gathered offline by our finance teams, and we had really turned our finance teams into true data jockeys. They were responsible for many of the data manipulations and aggregations of it with offline tools. What's the new model and what we were able to build with our Huron partners, we were able to automate those data feeds from new sources and align that data with the business structures, the dimensionality we built in each of the individual expense models, made sure we took advantage of the hierarchies that we need for planning and for ultimately for reporting. And what we were ultimately able to achieve was not just able to bring in the data sources from all of those offline systems, but we were able to add in additional IT sources, such as Ariba, our HR Workday system, and really build a really robust data model that supported all of the expense modeling that finance teams wanted to do across the organization. So it was a heavy lift, and it was one of the largest pieces of time in our timeline, but it was key to our success and really getting us to have the data sourced in so that our finance teams had that information at their fingertips to do the modeling that they would need.
And so 100% agree that that was our heavy lift and doing all that work. And when I think about it, not only was it needed just to acquire the data, but as you know, it enabled us to synchronize then some of the planning process, some of the business processes. A few of them come to mind for me, but maybe I could ask you is there an example that stands out to you that, hey, because of the data model and what we were able to do, it really impacted, one of the business processes and how you go about actually planning and then managing to that plan?
Sure, great question. At Nationwide, one of our largest expenses is our headcount and salary of our people. So one of the models that had previously been done offline with total inconsistency across the organization with our labor and salary planning. We allowed some areas to plan down to named employee. We had some people just planning in total, and we kind of had everything in between on the spectrum. So when we started off on the project, we worked with our Huron team to kind of talk about that spectrum of options for doing labor planning. Had a lot of sessions with our finance partners to talk about where could we meet on that spectrum of the most detailed to the least detailed. And what we ultimately were able to come up with was one salary workforce planning module that is used consistently across the organization. Regardless if you're in our property and casualty, our financial services, or you sit in one of our staff functions, we came up with a data model that fit the needs to be able to do headcount and salary planning and still give us the accuracy that was requested and have a consistent, uniform data model. What we ultimately landed on was we went to a salary grade level. So we didn't go down to the named person and we didn't do it in total, but we leveraged a salary grade, which is within our Workday system, to give areas the detail they thought they needed to accurately plan their headcount and salary, but driving consistency across the organization. So everyone kind of had to give a little in this one, but it was a huge win for us because it's the first time since I've been at Nationwide where I can say that I know across all of the areas how they're planning salary, how they're planning headcount, and more importantly, we can report on it consistently. And as we want to make modeling changes as to how we're doing things, whether it's in salaries, benefits, number of work days we take into consideration, we can make changes within our model and have that apply consistently across the organization. We've actually, we've only been live for 2 quarters, and we already had one salary change come up in terms of the number of work days that are going to be considered in 2024. And we were able, and I don't want to say with a snap of a finger, but it was pretty much with a snap of a finger, able to change that, have it reflect in all of our organization's salary and headcount planning. And it was just, a great example of how that data model really helped us out in driving the consistency across the organization.
Great, thanks, Lori. Last question for you. You mentioned, we've been live for a couple cycles now, a couple forecast cycles, and Nationwide's no different than any other organization. As you invest in these type of initiatives, there's always an eye towards what the return is, what the business value is. Now that you've used it for a couple cycles, can you comment on that? What sort of business value you're getting out of it?
Yeah, sure can. So we had a couple key themes that we took to our finance leaders that we talked about our project. We said the key themes for our project were we are going to increase efficiency, we are going to increase consistency, and we were going to have a more simplified process. And in the efficiency category, what I would tell finance leaders is that some of the things that I would say as a benefit getting into that efficiency key theme is our salary grade labor planning that I just mentioned. That makes it a much more efficient process for our finance teams. It's one model that they can use. But some of the things that we haven't talked about yet that the project delivered in the efficiency category is we also were able to seed the forecast with all of that data that we were able to source in. We were able to seed their forecast with pre-populated values based on the seeding methodology that they choose. Again, just making our finance teams more efficient. We also were able to deliver some self-service reporting that teams were able to leverage, and kind of just getting back to that efficiency theme. In the consistency category, I would say that some of the benefits we've seen there is the elimination of almost every single offline model used for expenses, which is huge. We now know that they're consistently using the tools. We've been able to reduce those offline models, which is a huge benefit to the organization. The automated calculations just ensure the consistency theme. And then in the simplification category, I would say some of the benefits we have are we were able to combine some of our reporting and not do things off in different areas in the organization. And a huge win as it relates to what we're talking about here today is that reduction in the manual data load. Having spent the time, and it was time intensive during the project, but having spent that time during the project to build out all those data loads, we're seeing a huge improvement in the reduction of time spent loading their forecast, building their forecast. And I think as we head into more forecast cycles, we will see a reduction in the cycle time overall to when it completes an expense forecast, because we're already seeing some uptick and improvement there. And you know, the other piece of it is just the near real-time reporting that we're able to deliver with those data feeds. Having our actuals brought in, having the forecast moved across, everything that we're able to do, again, it just really is simplifying and making us all more efficient in the organization.
That's fantastic. Thanks, Lori. And again, appreciate you joining today. It was very beneficial, and even more so, appreciate doing the project with you. As you know, I enjoyed it. And if I'm not mistaken, Chris, I think a question might have come in.
Yeah, Lori, so a question for you that I think is probably on a lot of our participants' minds. So the question is how did you bring the different groups or the different people, departments kind of together and standardize kind of on a view of data in your business information model activity? So what was the process that you undertook to get everybody kind of aligned to a common set of, you know, guiding principles, data definitions?
Yeah, that's a great question. One of the big things that we did in the phase one of the project is we had a really strong change management team that Huron brought to the table. And they were key to bringing in the right people to the table to talk about, as we're changing things like going to the salary grade, gaining everyone's alignment up front as we were building that, and gaining that agreement well before we went live. So change management was key throughout the entire first phase of the project, to whether it was in our IT organization and getting the data model set for the modeling they wanted to do. We brought in the right people to have those discussions to address their concerns, because some people had concerns about things changing. They weren't comfortable with that. So the change management was a huge piece to us landing on a successful data model that now people were not surprised by when we went live, and they are those are our change agents now that are out in the organization and helping through our go live, and as we've been through 1 or 2 cycles now.